Hello and welcome to Mary Live. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle. My friends in Jesus and Mary, children are sacraments. Children bring grace into the world. Children delight the heart of Abba Father. And I'm not saying when I say children are sacraments that we should start adding to the list of seven because we'd have many billions. I'm saying children bring the mystery and the beauty and the peace of God into our world. Now, I've recently been blessed by having 4 new grandchildren within the last year and a half. And this is not unique to me. When you're looking at that baby, you can sense the divine. You can sense something so beautiful and holy. You can sense God's creation. And also, I find that those babies, in such a beautiful way, help you to rediscover what's important. In other words, looking at a newborn baby blocks out all the other concerns that you had right before that, right? That beautiful, beautiful child just screams the spiritual and a priority of people over anything else. And then as they grow older, even, I've got a toddler grandchild, about a year and a half, you rediscover the world with them. You stop for cracks in the concrete and jump over them. You look at a butterfly. You're amazed at a little lizard that runs by. You rediscover the beauty of creation through these kids. That's what I mean when I'm saying they're sacramental. God uses children to bring grace to humanity in such a powerful way. And of course, then it continues. Now, having raised 8 rascals myself, I'm not saying there's not times of challenge. I'm not saying in the middle of the night, when the baby's up for the 3rd time, they're going to say, oh, there's my little sacrament crying again. I get that. There's great challenge. And that's why it's one wonderful reason to have kids when you're married and younger, is so you can have the energy to keep up with the rascals. But they're still sacraments. God acts and moves our hearts through them in such a beautiful way. Now, we sadly have to talk about the lack of appreciation of children in our ear. Why? Because it's ubiquitous. And we all know that really starts with abortion, right? Abortion sets the standard that children are meaningless, that children have no value, that children are not worth changing a plan in career or a plan in financial savings. Abortion is the ultimate slap in the face of God the Father that I don't want your creation. And I know there can be an endless reason of circumstances, and I'm not unempathetic about the realities of quote, unplanned children at difficult times. It's just that we can't kill them, right? As the Pope said, don't hire an assassin to solve your problem. And that's what happens when we have an abortion. We hire an assassin to solve our problems. If the mafia would do that, we would shriek, we would disdain. So we can't do it. Now, sadly, the abuse of children, even in terms of a generic sense, not just an individual, I'm not talking about the physical abuse, of course, which is grossly and tragically widespread. I'm talking about the formation abuse of children. God wants children brought up aware of Him, formed into the reality that there is a God, there is a church, there is grace. They're not alone. These kids are not alone. And that in light of the great Jewish Christian revelation of family, this image of family, which I got in Nazareth many years ago, that they should have a peace. They shouldn't have to figure out everything from the time that they're 5 or even 10 or even 15. But what are we doing? Well, we're attacking children with false ideology. We're attacking children with things like are little Johnny and little Sally, are you racists? Let's examine whether or not you're a racist or not. Now, that's even before some of them can spell the word. This is an affront. And when it gets later, of course, even the teens, we say, well, Sally and Johnny, by recess time today, can you choose your sex? Can you tell us, what your gender, which is not the appropriate use of that term anyway, but can you tell us what your gender is so we can plan for next year and what we should call you? You understand what a gross violation of God, but also of that kid's emotional and psychological well-being it is to ask him to make that decision in high school for the rest of his life or her life. And it's getting worse and worse. It was announced recently that in China, the teenagers will be indoctrinated into Marxism, into the thought of Xi Jinping as a special formation so that they can grow into a Marxist understanding, which is no God, no true morality, no supernatural life. It's what G.K. Chesterton said about the insanity, the madness of materialism. The madness of materialism is, first of all, trying to identify the whole world on your turf, which is that there's no God and there's no spiritual. And secondly, you've got to say, okay, I just made a choice. Well, actually, no, I can't make a choice because the choice is an immaterial act. So I guess I just had a chemical reaction in my brain that made me say, I love you. But when I say I love you, it's only chemical, it's only material because I don't have anything else. So Chesterton's right in saying it's a madness. And now we're indoctrinating our kids to it. Well, I want to read to you two very poignant messages. I'm reading these from volume 8 of Direction for Our Times. We've talked about this many times before in the program. I think it's absolutely authentic. You can make your own call, listen with the Spirit as what it does to your heart. Does this sound, as I'm going to be reading two of these messages, does it sound like it's true to you? In terms of ecclesiastical status, all these messages have received the imprimatur from the past local bishop in the Diocese of Kilmore. But listen to the words of Jesus, what I believe to be the words of Jesus in terms of children, what's happening right now with children, and why we have to hear this, because we need to do all we can in a new wave of love and concern for our kids to stop it. So this is a message from September 17th, 2004, as Anne writes, quote, "Today our Lord showed me a classroom filled with small children. They were very beautiful, as small children are, and I felt our Lord's powerful and total love for each one of them. He showed me how he suffers because he is being denied access to them." And now the words of Jesus. Quote, "They are not told about me, Anne. They are filled instead with worldly notions that change from week to week as worldly souls argue and compete for the honor of creating an ideology. They, the people who create these thoughts, leading nowhere, are puffed up with pride. The schools of nonsense manufactured by worldly souls soothe their consciences and feed their sinfulness. Children are often far more discerning than adults, and my little ones are confused at worst. At best, they learn nothing. My pain at this is severe and touches the core of my Sacred Heart. They will wander aimlessly through their lives. Certainly, in my mercy, I will secure access to them at some time. But I want more than that for them. I want more than that for each one of you. Bring me to the children, dear servants of heaven. Bring me to the smallest members of God's kingdom, so that I may take my rightful place in their souls. You see the fruits of my absence in their lives. Your youth are not happy. They are in anguish at the separation from their God. I am also in anguish at this separation. I suffer for their pain and confusion. Dear servants, these poor souls do not even know the source of their pain. They know simply that something they require has not been given to them. I am that something. You will not fix these children with worldly notions. They need me. Now, perhaps your mind, like mine, would race to these scenes in front of these school boards that are taking place throughout our country, and of course, in more dictatorial, totalitarian ways in places like China, and also elements in Europe as well, where these school boards are having battles just about the fundamental concept of respecting God and respecting the basic premise of do good and avoid evil. We don't even know, and we don't agree, what basic right and wrong is anymore. Of course, the children are confused. Look at the frightening increase in teenage suicide. We've never faced anything like this in society before. Never. There's no precedence for the number of teenage suicides, because what Jesus says in this message is true. This is the puffed pride of people who, in a materialist vision of reality or other false ideologies, are seeking their own fulfillment in a certain way, and in the meanwhile, children are being lost and frightened and without a knowledge of how to navigate their lives. Now, I want to read a second message because, of course, ultimately, where does the responsibility lie? It lies with parents, right? And society in general, but never usurp the role of parents. The freedom of parents, of what's best for their children. Unless you're talking about gross, abnormalities or gross cases of abuse. Other than that, it's a God-given right of parents to dictate what's right for their children, both in terms of education and in terms of health. Now listen to this message. This is May 26, 2004, which speaks about the challenges and the shortcomings of moms and dads. Now, again, this is hard to hear in a certain sense, but it's the conscience that has to be convicted so that we can rectify it. So in that mode and with a sense of positive remedy, I read this message. May 26, 2004. And by the way, let me say real quickly, again, these messages, you can get them, they're free online, directionforourtimes.com. I especially for things that are taking place right now, I strongly encourage you to read volumes 5 and volume 8, because I think they give a realistic idea of the challenges, but always peace, hope, and even joy, because Jesus is guiding us through this time. Quote, Jesus showed me his deep disappointment at the sight of many of today's mothers. He gave me a glimpse of the heart of a mother who was heedless to the needs of her children and overly concerned with things of this world and of her appearance, as in physical appearance. This was disturbing. Jesus told me that this mother, who is representative of many, lacks love for her children and loves herself. He indicated her heart, which was like a cracked stone with small serpents moving through the cracks. I hate serpents, and this vision was very unpleasant. The serpents represented pride, avarice, jealousy, hatred. Jesus was greatly disappointed as he showed me the children who are emotionally abandoned and receiving indifference when they are in need of and entitled to warmth and love. I felt revulsion at the sight of this woman, but again, she was representative of many modern women. I must say that on the outside, this woman was quite beautiful. While this woman was repulsing me, Jesus moved on to show his opinion or experience of many modern men. He said they ignore their own spiritual duties and often completely abandon any formation of their children. He indicated great sins of the sexual nature, some with complicit partners, but also many assaults on innocent victims. Jesus told me he is with every innocent victim, always. He said he hears every cry, and each act will have to be atoned for. Jesus is disgusted and repulsed by these sins, but he does not turn his face away because he must witness every act on earth. Jesus then said, quote, "Because you are my apostle, you are entitled to joy. So I will now give you joy and show you what gives me joy." Jesus showed me the heart of a woman apostle. And these are apostles, a member of the movement of Correction for Our Times is in this particular case. Jesus showed me the heart of a woman apostle. It had no open cracks in it and was like beautiful warm marble. This heart was well protected by its owner through prayer and service, and Jesus felt joy and happiness upon the contemplation of this soul. This was a modern apostle who was attempting to follow him. I could see that there had been cracks in the past, but they were well sealed and closed by prayers and sacrifices and acts of unselfishness. They were healed. These cracks where sin had formerly left openings did not bother Jesus in the least. On the contrary, they were signs of how the soul had turned away from sin and had followed him. Jesus then showed me that while he was surveying the sins of both men and women today and filled with just anger, there was a constant tugging at his sleeve. This distracting tugging came from the prayers of souls in Eucharistic adoration. These prayers distracted him from his just anger and deflected great calamities from befalling this world. Chastisements have been mitigated in this way. He showed me Our Lady, who was collecting poor wounded souls from this world of darkness. She was drying tears, healing wounds, and then instructing souls on what they could do to best serve Jesus and help them to save others. This was so beautiful and did make me happy and joyful, despite the ugliness of the first parts. Jesus told me that in Eucharistic adoration, his graces flow into souls, who then go back into the world, where his graces then flow into their homes, workplaces, and peer groups. He said that in the most difficult cases, where an adorer is still sinful, he can preserve their families and limit the damage this person does to others while also healing and preserving the person. In the best cases, where the person accepts his grace and lives a pious life, he can truly change areas of the world. He showed me that the more souls we have in Eucharistic adoration, the more the river of purity will cleanse the world. Now, my friends, that's a strong private revelational confirmation of what we read in the headlines. We know this is taking place. But here's an interior revelation, which I believe is absolutely true, to help us remedy. It's not to judge. It's to help us change. And so, what does Jesus say? Eucharistic adoration. I was just talking to a wonderful couple, two different individuals just in the last couple of days. One said, I so miss Eucharistic adoration. I don't have any access. And I said, because of various closings and new policies, and I said, try what I call parking lot adoration. And before you score on this, give it here. Drive into the parking lot as close as you can to where Jesus is reserved in a church. And then start adoring him through that wall. And say, Jesus, I want to be before you, but I can't. Through no fault or power of my own, I can't. So I'm going to adore you through this wall, through the wall of the church, from my car. Do you think Jesus is going to say, oh, sorry, the grace just has a tough time getting through brick. It's a physiological problem. I believe he could grace you even more, if you show such a love for our Eucharistic Lord that you're willing to adore him from the outside. Now, of course, there's places where we do have Eucharistic adoration. I think the call is clear. We need adoration to save family life. We also need adoration to keep our peace through the present crazy and what I consider to be the strong probability of further crazy, which society is presenting us pretty much on all sides. Adore our sweet Lord in the Eucharist. Get sunburned. Get balm. Get healed. And try it. Try it. If you're feeling so upset over the recent debate versus vaccinations versus non-vaccinations, and you just don't know what to do anymore, and you go to adoration. I promise you'll feel more peaceful afterwards. I promise you'll keep that question in perspective of the cosmic question of the glory of God and the salvation of souls and the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which is really what we should be focusing on primarily. Not things of the body first, but things of the soul first. That's what makes us Christian. So I say to parents, re-examine the priority of the gift, the untold gift of the miracles that you call kids. Re-examine, are they first? Do you need to maybe reassess your priority list, your time? The greatest gift you can give a kid is time. That's the ontological, existential way of saying you are first. If there's ways that you can avoid having other people take them in ways that will not let your children receive the graces of love and care that God gives to a mother and father in a very special way, try to leave your children with others as on the bare minimum. I'm not talking about proper time where you have a break. I'm talking about a fundamental idea that someone else can raise your kid better than you can, and or at least as well while you're doing other things. It's time to refocus on our kids. And I want to say a final word to grandparents. Grandparents, I think it's time, and I'm a grandparent too, it's time we step it up. Use whatever legitimate influence you can to help your children have a new appreciation, both not just in philosophy, but in action of your children. I'm not talking about grandparental micromanaging. I'm not talking about imprudent activities. I'm saying confirm and affirm the importance of them having their children and showing both in time and in priority that they're the greatest elements in their life after God and their marriage, and through and in organically with their marriage. Also, for grandparents who don't have access to be able to do anything practical or in terms of advice, and again, there's many that fall in that category. To say something will make things worse. Pray for your grandkids like never before. Have this image. Put a rosary visually around each grandkid. Okay? And then pray those beads every day, naming each of your grandkids specifically, protecting them from false ideology, protect them from decisions they should not be having to make at this tender early age, protecting them from Marxist ideology which says God is dead. Pray those beads, my friends, and I know Our Lady will exponentially protect and guide and form and heal, because we're all wounded in some degree, and heal your grandkids like never before. It's time to save the children. Let's make new Copernican efforts to put our kids on a level of appreciation like God the Father has, which he says in things like the Divine Mercy Chaplet are his favorites. Thanks for being with us today with Mary Live. God bless you all.